Cheer, cheer the red and the white, honor the name by day and by night. Lift that noble banner high, shake down the thunder from the sky. What though the odds be great or small, Swans will go in and win overall, while her loyal sons are marching.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of the Swans Bigfooty Podcast. I'm your host Bonds. Joining me is SR100.
Howdy.
SM.
Hey.
Von.
Hey guys.
And a special guest for the week, Grimlock.
Hi there.
Now we are coming off a very impressive win over St Kilda with the return of Gary Rohan. Von, can you please give me your highs and lows from the match?
At the start, I thought the first half was very average, to put it simply. We looked sloppy. Our forward 50 entries, we were absolutely thrashing them, but we couldn't really hit up a target. That was partly due to St Kilda flooding back so much. But also, it was a little bit frustrating because if we play like that against Geelong or Hawthorn, we're going to get smashed. So, my high for the game was probably the fact that Tippett got subbed off and we could still see that the team performed cohesively. And my negative for the match would probably what I said earlier, which is just really bad forward 50 entries.
Okay, SM, can I get your views from the match?
Yeah, like Von, I reckon the first half was a bit of a snooze fest. I was a little bit worried at halftime whether we'd actually be able to get up. I mean, some pretty horrible memories of last year's game against them down in Melbourne came flooding back, but we got there in the end. And I guess my highlight would be the J squad coming out. And we had the Jack, Jed, Jesse, and who's the other one? Who else? Jude all kicked 2 goals, which was great to see. Tippett kicked his 5 goals, which was always welcome, but it was good to see some of the midfielders getting back amongst the goals after the last couple of weeks. My low light, look, I'm going to be a little bit harsh here and say I think he had a good return, but Rohan, he was just muscled off the ball a little too easily, and I think it was good to see him back in the team, but I just can't see him holding a place for the rest of the year. And it's a bit of a harsh low light, I'll admit, but I guess that was the one that got drawn to mind.
Okay. SR100, can I get your views for the match?
I think I'd echo the sentiments of Von and SM and say the first half was disappointing, to say the least. I thought it was only really Shaw and McGlynn stood out for work rate. And I've been a little bit critical of Reece Shaw's place in the team, but I thought he busted his guts early and led from the front. I'd probably exclude Tippett and White from that, though, because the delivery to them was poor at best. White was pretty much ignored, actually, and the strategy seemed to be to deal with the flood, kick it high to Tippett, and just hope he could out-muscle 2 to 3 players, which isn't going to happen. But I think one thing that stood out to me was comparing, say, playing St Kilda and the Bulldogs. St Kilda flood back and don't take the game on. The Bulldogs, to their credit, aren't much better than St Kilda. They try to win the game, and I don't think we'll face a flood like that against Hawthorn and Geelong, so I'm not too concerned about what happened there. The second half, I thought we played a lot better and we got on top and class won out in the end. The highlight for me was probably Kennedy off the leash. I've been looking for a game like that from him for a little while. Low light was probably the way we dealt with the flood. We didn't play smart footy, didn't lower our eyes, didn't even look to kick sideways. We just bombed it in there and hoped, and we probably should have had that game won at half time if we capitalised on opportunities, and we didn't.
Okay. Grim, what are your highs and lows from the match?
Well, I actually have 2 highs. I'm going to start with Gary Rohan's return. Just his return alone. Just forget about how he went, but just to see him come out on the field when he took off that subs vest and the crowd went crazy, that was amazing. And on the game itself, I thought Dane Rampy had an excellent game. I think during the week he was nominated in the under-23 All-Australians in the back pocket, and I was a bit sort of iffy about that, but after seeing his game today, where St Kilda tried to isolate him at fullback on Tom Lee, I think it was, I thought he played an excellent game. His rebounding is just top notch at the moment, as good as Malcheski.
His confidence is amazing. I mean, he came into the side and was, a bit startled, a bit fresh, and he's just completely grown as a player over the last season. It's ridiculous.
It's amazing what confidence can do for your game.
Yeah.
Because that game against Hawthorn earlier in the year, they tried to do what Security did today, and the way he dealt with it, it's polar opposite today, the way he handled it. So I think he might be better. Yeah, he's probably better for that game. He's learned on the run with a lot of change down in the back line. So he's been bloody impressive down there.
He's been great.
I honestly feel as if the inclusion of Rampy this year has really offset the loss of Johnson. Whilst Johnson may be a little bit taller and could probably deal with a key forward a little bit better, Rampy's been fantastic all year, and I've got confidence in him again in most matchups now, which is...
For me personally, I think Rampy, I would say, is a better rebound player than Johnson was, but Johnson's probably a better one-on-one player than Rampy is.
Yep, I agree.
Johnson's probably there to eventually take over for the Richards type role and bulk up a little bit, play more as a key defender. So Rampy.
Rampy's more.
I think Rampy could have been and he could have been a Bulldogs player. Like, what were they thinking when he trained with them for 2 years?
I've been quite impressed with Richards as well, because he's been winning like a lot of one-on-ones, but he's also been generating more run than he was last year. So it's really good that he's kind of filling that hole left by, I can't believe I forgot his name. Oh, Matner. I thought his running and rebound has been much improved.
And I
also want to say that I was very impressed by Benny today. I know SM gave him a spray last week, but I thought he was really great today, and he was very smart with his kicking and marking. So,
the difference is he got 19 touches today and kicked 2 goals, 3, and had a couple of tackles as well. It's a very different game from last week.
Anyway,
he was better for... You're right. He was better for the run from last week, though, McGlynn. He should have had the run in the reserves, but he might be in trouble, though, for that little... I don't know who the Saints player was he jumped into, but given his record, he might get cited for that.
Yeah. I saw that was just a genuine marking contest.
They showed it on replay.
It's always the raffle.
They showed it on replay on TV, and it looked like there really wasn't much in it. It should have been a free kick, but he still had his eyes at the ball, and he can't get reported for that.
Yeah, he looked like he was just genuinely trying to spoil it, to me at least.
Just on playing the bottom teams, someone tell me if this is just my bias during the game. Does there seem to be a trend from the umpires to almost reward the rubbish teams to keep them in the game a little bit? Like holding the ball didn't seem to be called early against Security, but O'Keefe got pinned pretty much straight away for one that hadn't been called against the Saints, or am I just looking at it through red and white eyes?
No, look, I think there is something in that. But, I guess because maybe it's almost that mentality that this decision won't change the outcome of the game. They'll be a bit more inclined to give it or not give it.
I didn't
really notice the umpires today, except for that really awful 50 and that really soft free kick at the end. But aside from that, I thought it was okay.
What were your highlights, Bonds? Anyway, we always forget to go back to you.
Well, I was actually going to say McGlynn was part of my highlights. I thought the real highlight today was the spread of goal kickers we had. We had 7 players kick multiple goals, and whilst in the first half we were just bombing it long and kind of hoping, in the second half we lowered our eyes and were really potent when going forward.
I found especially when Tippett went off towards the end of the third quarter, it really helped because players suddenly thought hang on, we've got Jesse White up forward who can actually kick a goal, and he really got a bit of a chance to shine without Tippett around.
I was really impressed by that sub move. At first, I was a bit kind of iffy on it because I thought, maybe you could have rested another player. Yeah, Jude. Yeah. But looking back on it, it's kind of good that they did that because we need to know, we need to remember how to play without a target of Tippett's calibre in our forward line in case something does happen in a finals game. So I'm really glad that they kind of made that scenario happen.
I will also point out that once Tippett did get subbed out, though, we did actually we weren't scoring at the same rate as we were at the early to middle point of the third quarter, where we really
I think that
St
was
Kilda
more
to
a
the sword.
coincidence, though, because I reckon when the Heat went out of the game, as often happens with us, we kind of took our foot off the pedal. But it could have had something to do with Tippett as well. I agree. I just saw it more of a coincidence, I guess.
Fair enough.
Well, he does supposedly have hamstring tightness to some extent from like the end of last week's game. So I don't really care what the impact was resting him. I think.
Yeah, resting him was the
as well,
best choice we could have done. If it keeps him just even 2 or 3% better for next week against Geelong, it could be the difference between winning and losing.
So we've touched on it a little. Sorry.
I'll give my low light as well. The low light I really thought today was actually we couldn't really curtail Jack Stevens' performance, and it's been something I've been noticing in the last few weeks that we've been struggling to shut down on the opposition midfielders a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's starting to become
Did we put much work into him though? But O'Keefe was on Down Sando. Stephen didn't really hurt us. So I'm just wondering how much work.
Stephen got
kicked 2
35
goals,
disposals, kicked 2 goals. I think he set up 5 of theirs as well.
7 inside 50s.
He was brilliant. He was keeping St Kilda in a match early on. Him and Geary were fantastic for them. So
I guess that's if you presume that St Kilda were ever actually in the match, as close as the scores got. I think it was only a matter of time before we ran away with it.
I do agree with you, though, Bonds, that our midfield has not been that impressive as, lately.
we haven't been running 2 ways.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jack only had 3 disposals in the first quarter and Hanbury wasn't much better.
When they lifted, the team definitely lifted.
Yeah, exactly. You could see it when they lifted.
Like Jack
what was Jack's final stats?
He had
Got
20
20
disposals, but he only had 8 in the first half. He also kicked 2 goals and he set up a further 2, I think, off the top of my head. So
Interestingly, he only had 3 tackles, which is quite low for him.
So he was number 1 in tackles.
Yeah.
A few rounds ago. Probably not now anymore.
Got his 9 tackles or something against the Dogs, where all during the heat of the game, not during junk time.
Now, leading the tackle count today was Parker and Ryan O'Keefe, who both got 6 tackles each.
Yeah.
It was a pretty low tackling game, though.
Yeah. Which is surprising when you think about, Swans Saints sort of games. They're generally pretty locked down contested.
That's okay. We can get the pleasure of watching the calibre of those games against Fremantle.
Oh, yeah, looking forward to it. In the grand final, I think Bigfooty would melt down.
I think I would melt down.
I think we'd win easily.
Yeah,
I reckon.
We only laid 57 tackles for the game, and St Kilda
That's
laid
very
46. But admittedly, we were trying to make a lot of defensive tackles when they were flooding their forward 50 in the first half, and it's harder to make a tackle in your own forward 50 days than your defensive forward 50.
So
I also
just
thought
thought tackling than the number though. I thought the first half a lot of our tackles might be tackles, but they were ineffective tackles. I remember a few people getting shaken off a bit easily, and St Kilda generating some run from the back line because of missed tackles and half tackles that would have counted.
I can remember a couple off the top of my head where player just couldn't lay. One I do want to highlight. He had a great game, but Von and I both noticed this during the game, and there was one instance where McGlynn missed a tackle and then just stood there and watched as the Saints player raced away and then wandered casually back into our 50. And that really surprised me because it doesn't seem like the sort of ethos that we have at the club where, he didn't sort of offer that second effort or the chase to at least put pressure on the player.
Which is odd.
Yeah.
Because, one of his clangers stood out to me. He miskicked it and he followed up with a 20-metre dash to get the ball and second effort a couple of times.
Look, I'm not saying it's something that he does that often. It just really stood out in my memory as a bit of a shock. He might have just been tired or something like that.
I do remember that. Yeah, no, it's just an odd. He can be such a polar opposite in the middle of one game, but I think there's a general inconsistency in McGlynn's effort.
Not to mention that was quite late in the fourth quarter, I think. So it wasn't, at that stage the game was already won. I think it can be.
I guess so, but you want to see. I'd like to see a consistent effort from siren to siren, and I think that's been one of the big bugbears about the Swans over the long period of time, which is that we just don't close out games as strongly as we start them. We need that full quarter effort if we really want to hit hard in finals.
The other area that could have also helped in regards to the tackle count today, there was only 47 stoppages, but Like, according to the AFL website, which is ridiculously low for a match that we play.
Yeah.
Like, I'm used to us having a match where we've got 90, 100 stoppages, not 47, so that would also indicate to a low tackle count as well.
Also, I want to draw attention to the fact that Mumford had 35 hitouts, which was easily the best on ground. I think the next best was Hickey for the Saints with 20. So Mumford's really coming into some strong form this time of the season, just in time for finals.
Yeah,
It's been an interesting shift. Yeah, there's an interesting shift in time in the centre bounces between Mumford and Pike in the last month. I don't know anywhere you can check that stat. So if anyone's got it, that would be good. But I think Pike
Badger gives those sorts of stats.
He doesn't seem to be going to as many centre bounces as he was previously, and Mumford's sort of taken that number one ruck role with Pike forward more often than not, which is I'm not sure why. Or
I think it's because Pike is the better contested mark.
Pike's a better forward than Mumford.
Yeah,
We're not going to contest that, but Mumford is still a better tap ruckman than Pike, and he's very, very hard to push off the ball. Like, Mumford's still got 5 tackles today, and when the ball gets to the ground, he's almost an extra midfielder.
That's it. And Pike's kicked something like 20 goals, 3 from set shots, or something ridiculously accurate like that, I think they said
like
today.
Pretty much Kurt Tippett numbers.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
I mean, with the midfield form, there was an interesting time, just looking at the time on ground, for instance. Hanbury is copping a lot of flack for his game today, but I mean, he only had more game time than Rohan and Tippett, who were both affected by the sub, the vest.
So what, Hanbury might be carrying something?
I just wonder if there's a little bit of in-game resting, and structure, like let's get the ball to Kennedy and Parker a bit more today, and rotate Hanbury off, maybe push Jack a bit out of the contest. I'm not sure how often he was at the centre bounce, for instance, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I know there's a bit of panic on the board about the midfield's out of form or Hanbury can't handle a tag, but I think there's a bit more to it than that. I wouldn't be too concerned at this stage.
Hannah's was running as hard as he was in the really top Brownlow winning form he was in a few weeks ago, but he definitely has dropped off. So,
but I mean, he had less game time than Jed Lamb today, for instance.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you said that because, watching it, I thought he started most centre bounces, so that's interesting.
And I guess we've kind of touched on it and danced around it, but what does everyone really take out of Gary Rohan's performance today, and does he have a spot for next week?
A fit, fully healthy Gary Rohan, to me, is a Swans 22 best 22 player, but I mean, you mentioned he got pushed off the ball. What were we meant to see from a sub role from him? I wanted him to start the game because I thought this was his opportunity against St Kilda, because I think there's a lot of pressure to potentially start him next week. So, and you've got to fit Tom Mitchell back in. To me, Tom Mitchell is best 22.
Yeah, exactly. That's the question.
For me, I think it's if Rohan can get to that form he was at pre-injury between now and finals, if the coaches think that he can achieve that, then play him, because we've got a top 4 spot sewn up.
Then who do we remove for Mitchell? That's
on the other hand, if the coaches just wanted to give him a run today just so he can keep up with the pace of the game, then obviously they're not going to play him next week, and that's actually, I think that's the more likely option, because coming back from an injury that long, I don't think we're going to see his best just in 3 or 4 weeks, and we can't carry a team that keeps on changing into finals. So
unless,
I don't think he'll start.
Unless he's seen as Luke Parker from last year, you're going to be the sub every single week, and we just want you to come on and impact the game for a quarter if we're in trouble. That
but
might be
Luke
a role
wasn't
he has.
injured for a year.
Oh no,
plus.
I know, but just structurally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the form of Lamb today, backing up from I don't know why he was dropped ever, but probably throws a spanner in the works for Rohan, because he's probably in the spot Rohan could play a full game in, and Lamb hasn't. He performed today. He deserves a spot next week. I'm not sure who you drop.
Yeah.
I mean, who do you drop for Mitchell, basically, is the question when it comes to Rohan for me.
And, yeah, it's a really hard call at this stage, and I honestly just think going into finals, like Von's saying, I would take a 22 that has every single player fit and, has had a full season in them. like Mitchell has, rather than take the risk, take the gamble that Rohan can come on and really make a difference in a preliminary final or a grand final.
Look,
Yeah.
also looking with what we could potentially do with Rohan, because we've got that top 2 spot sewn up.
Top 4.
Oh, top 4, sorry, not top 2.
Getting ahead of ourselves.
Sorry, we've got the top 4 spots sewn up. It's going to be hard for us to still reach top 2. Fremantle are breathing down our necks on percentage, and they don't exactly have the hardest run home with Port Adelaide and St Kilda in their final 2 rounds. So we could almost look at potentially resting it.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll need to win both games and win by a decent margin, which is going to be hard enough in itself. I think the best thing we could probably do going into the finals, because we've got 2 weeks to prepare now, is start resting some players who might be a bit sore from the year. Like give Jude Bolton a rest.
Yeah, but when have the Swans ever actually rested players? It's not in their philosophy, really.
It isn't really our philosophy, but it might be something to really look at doing and give players that may have to play in finals some game time.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this before, because we're very likely to play Hawthorn in round 23 and in the first round of the finals. Does that affect the way that we line up on them in round 23? If we know that basically we can't change our position regardless of the result, do we rest someone like Jude Bolton?
Remember that
I personally
Collingwood
don't think
Geelong
you play
game?
around with form.
But
years ago.
Jude's form's hardly been impressive.
It's been okay.
You go for the win against Hawthorn. In round 23, we go for the win. If we can hurt their confidence, even if it just knocks them around 1 or 2%, it's worth it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Like Geelong did it in 2011, rotating the players a lot, but Sydney don't rotate the players at all. Like last year's, but both teams won premiership, so I don't think that's a right or wrong answer. It just depends on the coaching philosophy.
Yeah.
Also, I want to point out, I think Mitchell and Brando Jack was actually today. I think they were given a rest. I personally thought it was a rest and that they're going to be back.
Mitchell's was a rest. I'm not sure about Brandon Jack.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mitchell was definitely the one more likely to come back in.
Grim, did Brandon Jack play in the reserves today?
He played in the reserves. He was okay, showed a few signs of his speed, but he probably wasn't one of the best players on the day.
Okay.
If it comes down to a choice between Brandon Jack and Gary Rohan, then Gary Rohan's in for me anyway. I think
Really?
Brandon Jack's... Yeah.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with
Jack's
that.
cooked.
I would 100% agree with that. I think, in all honesty, but when finals come around, we'll be replacing Rohan with Jeddah most likely. But
Oh, we'd hope so, but I'm still not convinced he'll make it back.
even then, I think Rowan's game today was a lot better than everyone's really given him. It wasn't brilliant by any standard of the imagination, but he got 5 disposals, 4 were effective. He burned a couple of players off with leads down the ground. Whilst he got caught by Geary once, Geary's one of the fastest players at the Saints.
Yeah.
But he took the game. He took the game on.
I think that's important to note. That Geary, I think a lot of people are going to take a lot out of him getting run down by Geary and look at it as he's losing his speed. But
I think
Geary's
Geary actually is the fastest player at the Saints, off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But what did we want Rohan to do in one quarter? It was just about getting out on the field and not getting injured, really.
5 disposals, 4 of them effective, and I didn't remember him being that good a kick, actually. I remember he hit 19 out of 20 targets in the draft camp kicking test, but it was always questions over his kicking, especially kicking at full flight, so...
Well, and he's not a high possession player and never has been. He's a full game, he's a 15, 16 possession, couple of goals, impact player.
He is very reminiscent of Goods. I mean, Goods is not one that you would naturally associate with accumulating disposals, but he'll have 20 or 25 in a game and really tear a team apart. And I can see Rohan doing the same sort of thing.
I think we
can sort of see Rohan will take Goods' spot over the next few years if everything goes to plan. So Goods is probably actually the X factor or whatever you want to call it in determining whether Rohan plays. Probably can't carry both of them lacking fitness playing a similar role. So, and Goods is ahead of Rohan, clearly. But is Goods fit?
Okay, I do believe that we will play Rohan this week against Geelong, but we're going to have to move on there. We've got a special guest talker today in Grimlock, and we've all got a few questions to ask him. SM, do you want to take it up?
Yeah. So I guess I want to cast your mind back to the grand final last year when, the game was in the balance and up stepped Mitch Morton and snapped 2 goals in a row to help us cement, our place in premiership history. What was going through your mind when you saw Mitch Morton get those 2 goals?
Well, where I was sitting was actually in the pocket where Morton snapped those 2 goals. So I had the best view of him, and you could see it almost unfold in slow motion, what was going through his head. And the feint that got around Gibson, I think that was mind-blowing for me because, as you know, I've had a history with Morton over the years. I was so happy for him when he kicked those goals.
Did someone else want to ask him something?
Yeah, I wanted to know, how did you come about being an AFL fan, being brought up in Sydney, and, well, you're a very dedicated fan. You're doing a lot of statistics work now, and you're being one of the top posters on the Swans Bigfooty board for a while now. I was just wondering how it all came about.
Yeah, that's a good question. Growing up in Sydney, as a kid, there wasn't really a choice. You had to support rugby league or nothing else, really. So for a long time, I was a big rugby league fan, a big Canberra Raiders fan.
Raiders, really?
Raiders, yeah,
Really?
yeah. Well, because I'm a bit of a bandwagoner.
But they're lime green.
Yeah, it works well. It's the green
They
machine.
look like lemons. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Limes, you mean?
Yeah.
No, anyway, so yeah, I was a big Canberra Raiders fan until about 97, which is when the Super League stuff happened. And like a lot of fans, I lost a lot of interest. But in general, I was a big sports fan anyway. I watch any sport on TV. And so when the Swans were playing, I would keep an eye on them. But because they weren't very good back then, like early 90s, didn't have much of an interest.
So you're a bandwagoner.
Oh, I'm a big bandwagon. I've told you this plenty of times. And after I went to my first AFL game, I think it was 98, and that was the game where Gary Ablett Sr. was playing, and it was billed as a big matchup between Lockett and Ablett. And
that was
that day.
The record crowd for the SCG.
Yeah, it was like 44,000 or something ridiculous like that, and that really got me into it, like the excitement, the intensity, and the Swans won by a huge margin that day. So I think from that day on, I was pretty much a fan. Still didn't go to too many games because I was still pretty young then. But over the years, slowly got more interested in it and less interested in rugby league.
Good stuff.
So given you are someone who's gone from rugby league to AFL in a rugby city, what do you think of GWS coming into the league and how it'll work in the future with 2 teams in Sydney?
Well, it is a big gamble, I feel. The support isn't quite there at the moment, and I think the way they've gone about it, by selecting a very young team that won't win many games in the first few years, shows probably a naive approach because the Sydney market's quite fickle and they will support winners. And if the team isn't winning, it's very hard to establish a good supporter base. So I think while that might have worked for Gold Coast, I think GWS should have recruited a lot more experienced players and trade away some of the young draft picks, which I think they're trying to do at the end of this season.
So on that point, then surely there will become a time where the Swans go down the ladder. It's sort of inevitable. Do you think we've got a committed supporter base in Sydney now after this sustained success?
I think there's a good core, but it's probably not as large as a lot of people think it is. So, for example, when we won the grand final in 2005, I think 2006 membership numbers shot up like massively. But then the next few years after that, where we were still making finals, but we were never really a premiership threat because the numbers dropped down. And I think the same thing's going to happen. It's just how Sydney is. You can't really change it. It's not like Melbourne.
Do you think that people will jump ship from the Swans to GWS if there comes a time when GWS is up making, consecutive grand finals?
If GWS are winning, yeah.
And we're losing?
And we're losing. Yeah, I think some people just claim both teams. Whoever's winning, that's the number one team at the moment.
Unfortunate, I guess, but that's the way it is.
It's a sad thing to say, but that's what I found in Sydney anyway.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Fair enough.
Bon, surely you've got a question to ask.
How could you support a team that wears lime green?
That's what she takes out of this.
They're the green machine. They were the best team at the time.
On to our next topic. SR100, you wanted to tell us why we will win the grand final.
Yeah, it was a throwaway comment last week that I remembered at about 8:10 tonight that I would tell you why we win the grand final. So here are the reasons why, if you've been hanging out for it all week.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Go for it.
Oh, hang on. Defence wins flags. That's a given. And I still believe we have the best defence, even better than Fremantle's, despite what the numbers might say, considering ours actually also generates more attack than Fremantle's. Number 2, the height up forward. I think someone mentioned in the commentary today, as much as people sometimes criticise having too many tools, tall men don't get shorter as the game goes on. They're still as tall as they were at the start. And we've got Tippett at his peak age, in arguably career best form, ready to fire. And he was good in the finals last year, so he's our X factor. Number 3, we've got the best ruck duo in the AFL. We lead the league in hit-outs, which gives us a distinct advantage in clearances and things like that. And ruckmen are vital to win premierships. I can't think of too many sides that have won without a decent ruckman. All our mids run both ways. Well, not today, but we have a long depth in the midfield. We've been there and done that. Not only have we won the premiership last year, but there's not many people in our team that don't have finals experience, and there's actually a lot of finals experience in that team, and that's where a player like a Jude Bolton, if people want to do think about dropping him, think twice, because he's played 30-plus finals, and that's vital in September. Our record against the fellow finalists, if we're looking at the top 5 as the contenders, Hawthorn, we've won 2 of the last 4, Geelong 2 of the last 4, Freo 2 of the last 4, Collingwood 2 of the last 3. None of them hold any great fears for us, whereas Hawthorn can't beat Geelong, Collingwood can't beat Hawthorn, Freo, they're not that good against. Yeah. So, and the grounds. We've won at Subi recently, we've won in Melbourne, we win in Sydney quite a bit, but so there's no real fears in the draw for us.
I've got one I'd like to add, actually. All season, especially in the second part of the year, we've been holding up and winning most of our matches, missing a little-known player called Adam Goods. How good are we going to be when we get him back?
Exactly. A 2-time premiership player.
2-time Brownlow medalist.
The other thing that I think is important is we're capable of long winning streaks. We've had 6-week winning streaks, I think. We haven't lost consecutive games all year, as poor as we have been in some games. If we want to go on a winning streak of 5 games in a row from today and make it 6 in a row, then we get a premiership, don't we? So another 6-game winning streak would be good. The last reason, it's just the vibe. We'll win back-to-back. This club's never done it, and this is the year.
I just worry if we had to play, say, a prelim against Geelong at the MCG, I would just have a sick feeling in my stomach all game. I see that as a sort of... there's a difference between getting up for the grand final against Hawthorn and playing off for a place in a grand final at the MCG, and I just can't see us performing as well.
It didn't stop us at 05.
I want you to explain that, because I'm not really sure why.
So I think there's a different mentality when it's the last day in September and you're playing off for the premiership. I think the ground really honestly doesn't make a difference, and I think the players lift for the occasion and they perform much better. When you're playing off for the grand final, I don't think the players would actually end up playing quite as well, and I think there'd be a lot more pressure on them for the expectation of that sudden death game. And if you look at our record at the MCG, apart from the grand final, it's really not that crash hot. And I'm happy to be proven wrong, and I hope I am. But if we have to play Hawthorn or Geelong or even potentially Richmond at the MCG, it could be quite a scary game.
We've won 75% of our last 4 games at the MCG.
We lost to Hawthorn there, though, earlier in the year.
We weren't
We've
really
still won
the
75%.
best.
Yeah, I'm
The
just
other
looking at...
thing is,
Yeah.
cast your mind back 12 months. We played Collingwood, ANZ, preliminary final. Hadn't beaten them since 2005. How'd you feel going into that game?
I actually was a lot more confident going into that game because I felt that the streak against the Pies had really shifted since Longmire and Buckley had taken over as coaches, and that we'd lost, I think, the last 2 against them under Longmire by very small margins where we should have actually won them. So I guess that's a little bit of a different story, and also the fact that it was at ANZ. But no, I do see your point, and I just will be interested to see what happens if we have to play in Melbourne for the preliminary final weekend, because I think it could be pretty much decisive of whether or not we win the grand final. I agree that if we make the grand final, we're a pretty good shot, but it's getting there that's the issue for me.
So you're probably hanging our premiership hopes on winning the next 2 games, finishing top 2?
No, I'm almost hanging my hopes on the fact that we might get Freo in prelim week, because I'd be very confident going over there and knocking them off.
I'd agree, but I think it's coming back that's the worry. You beat them in Perth, then you got to fly back and then fly to Melbourne. That's
Well, hopefully the AFL does us the nice favour of giving us the Friday night again.
I
Probably
can't.
forgot to book a stadium somewhere.
If it's a preliminary final, the AFL would have to book the Subiaco match on the Friday night just because the team may have to fly back. They wouldn't be able to put it on the Saturday. They'd have to book it on the Friday.
But as we're constantly reminded by the Hawthorn fans, the team that finishes top's meant to get the Friday night prelim finals. So who knows what they might do?
Yep, and the premiers aren't supposed to be able to recruit a new forward either.
Apparently. But you can recruit a full back.
Oh yeah, from another club you can rate it down, and you can re-sign your forward for over $1 million. But
yeah, easily.
That's neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
Playing Geelong in a prelim,
it does worry me.
Geelong, I fear Geelong more than anyone else in the finals. I don't fear Hawthorn in September. I think they'll choke, whether it's against us or someone else.
Geelong scare me with their finals experience.
Exactly.
That's the main thing for me. They just have so much talent and experience all around the ground. It's just, and they have a winning culture.
That's good.
Yeah, that's the main thing. But
they don't know how to
that
lose.
being said, I fear them at the MCG just as much as I would fear them at ANZ. So I don't think it's just a ground thing for me. It's just the team.
Okay, Von, how do you feel about us against Geelong this week then?
It's at Skilled Stadium. Obviously, you know what? Simmons,
yeah.
sorry.
Well, they pay a lot of money. Exactly.
Well, I'm just going to actually just do a complete 180 and say I actually give us a chance. I'm not sure why I say this. It's just because this is the sort of games that we don't really expect to win, and then we just come out and we just win it for whatever reason. And I don't think Geelong have been that impressive lately.
Demolished West Coast.
Yeah, but West Coast, if you look at their injury list, that's not that big a claim.
President.
Yeah, I just think that Geelong, I give us a chance, definitely. Yeah. And if we can win at that game, then I'm just going to go as far as saying that I think we can win the grand final.
Yeah, I reckon that's what next week's game comes down to, honestly. If we can win it, we're every chance of winning the grand final.
Geelong, look at their record against the top 8 sides. They don't lose to good teams very often. They're more likely to drop a game to Brisbane like they did than lose to us. So if we can beat them next week, that's a massive win. That's a game changer, I think. But seriously, if Selwood gets 50 friggin' free kicks for ducking like he did last time we played him, I'm going to throw a brick through the TV because that was bloody irritating.
Yeah.
Duckwood. His
we'll
last
just, we'll,
month,
just,
though.
we'll just line up McGlynn on Selwood and see who can duck further.
In a way,
Yeah.
it kind of feels like we haven't played Geelong this year. Like, I know we versed them at the SCG and we
It was
got
so early
absolutely...
in the season, though.
We
thrashed, but
we
we
didn't
were
really
so
get
poor.
thrashed. We were doing really well until Lewis Roberts Thompson went down with
Yeah.
injury, and that
Yeah.
allowed them to throw Taylor up forward.
Yeah,
The
so...
thing that scares me is that Selwood won that game for them. That was one of the best captains' games I've seen, and his last month has been sensational. And he's cherry ripe to
He's
carve us
almost
up
career
again.
best form at the moment.
Yeah,
He's in Brownlow form at the moment.
He's a rare player. Like, I know Ablett's
He's a
number one,
freak.
but Selwood must
What
be
did he get in the
number two.
first half on the weekend? It was like 20 disposals and 4 goals, wasn't it, against West Ham?
Yeah, and I think before a couple of weeks ago, his career high was 3 goals, and he's kicked 4 goals 2 weeks in a row now.
The interesting one for me will be whether they bring Tom Hawkins back, because he can't move.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's kicked 40-odd goals, but he can't bend over.
If they bring Hawkins back this week, I think they're almost doing us a favour. That may be
Watching him
a
try and
rather
bend over and
rash
pick up
call
the
to
ball has
say.
to be one of the funniest sights in footy.
But he's still having an impact. He's a good
Yeah.
player. And Stevie J, you've got to stop Stevie J.
Yeah, like Von said, I reckon that team is just so full of talent that it's quite scary to think about how he... I mean, it's hard, though, because do we almost just say we can go head-to-head with them and back our midfield to win? Because I reckon our midfield's too out of form at the moment to do much. I mean, I reckon second half today they were playing themselves back into a bit of form, but can we really trust that to carry over to next week?
I don't think the midfield's out of form. I think there was a little bit of rotation in today's game. They got smashed by
last 2
Collingwood.
weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
It was
I don't
nice
know,
to see
I-
Joey Kennedy in form.
Kennedy's coming into some form, which is good to see. I agree.
Grimlock, I want to ask you, who do you believe will take Steve Johnson this week?
Well, his usual opponent's Nick Smith, isn't it? But that's in the past where Steve Johnson's played as a forward, and I'm not sure whether Nick Smith could run with him in the midfield. So that's a very good question.
Because I wouldn't be confident if he decides, do we play 2 different players, Ryan O'Keefe to perhaps run with him in the midfield and use Nick Smith when he rests up forward, or do we go for midfielder who can play in defence as well? Maybe try running
Everett?
someone like
Everett?
Rampy on the field for him.
I wouldn't throw Everett on it.
I said Rampy.
Yeah, no, sorry, I said Everett.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Rampy will be an interesting choice. Definitely test him out. But I think Johnson really plays more as a midfielder nowadays anyway. So, yeah, O'Keefe might get the job. Maybe Hannah's, because he didn't have a good game today. Just get him to concentrate on just following Steve Johnson around, might get him back in form.
The other one is we also...
McLean.
Yeah,
Sure,
McGlynn's done a tagging job in the past, but that's quite rare. So
He played a really excellent tagging game on Selwood. I think last year.
yeah.
Yeah, so that might be a
I'm just
matchup for them
thinking,
to consider. Maybe Benny to Selwood and Rock to Stevie J.
I personally play Kieran Jack through Selwood and try and hurt him in the other direction.
I reckon play Jack in that sort of role.
We've got to play Jack against Selwood. It might be, especially with how we tried to tag Stephen and Pendlebury the week before, we're struggling with tackling the prime opposition midfielder at the moment. If we move Jack onto Selwood and force Selwood to start thinking about Jack running in the other direction, it may actually benefit us.
No,
Yeah.
I think
I like
Selwood's worst game was the Dockers game, where Crowley irritated the shit out of him. So that's where I come from, the Shaw McGlynn tag, only because I think they're the most irritating people we have in the team and could frustrate Selwood.
Oh, maybe Hanbury. Get Hanbury to talk his head off.
Yeah, true. So, I don't know. Or I think one of you suggested, do we just back our midfield to beat them? I don't know. I think
We
we've got
may
to try.
have to.
Got to try and seize the ruck advantage, because that Blivcast doesn't even win hitouts, but he's so athletic.
Yeah.
Mumford's in some great form at the moment, though, so I'd really back Mumford in that to pretty much win hands down.
I agree. And there's a few X factors up forward for them, Vardy and Pods Yadley, and making Harry Taylor accountable. We don't want them to have the luxury to throw him forward.
Oh, but if they throw him forward, won't that be a bit too top heavy? If they brought Hawkins back in as well.
But then sometimes they'll throw Podsiadly back. They just throw the maggots in the air.
The other key matchup for us, I know he had some troubles with hamstring tightness, but I don't think it'll keep him out of this week's game, will be Motlop. Nick Smith will have to go to him.
Motlop's an absolute freak these days. The goals that he was kicking against West Coast were just ridiculous.
And he absolutely destroyed us when we played him earlier on in the year.
They get a lot of run from Stokes, Motlop, Christensen, those type of players. They could run us off our feet, potentially, those three.
They're kind of historically the players we've struggled with. The kind of small forward, annoying small forward of like the Milne calibre.
Yeah, I was happy he was sub today.
That was weird.
So who's tipping Sydney to win next week rather than hoping we'll win?
It sounds like Bono is.
I'm going.
I'm tipping us.
You
know what?
Them.
I tip us. I back our midfield. I think they've been not very good of late, and I think that we've kind of almost been waiting for a performance like this just to kind of stamp some authority. I don't care. This is false optimism, but Sydney by 27 points.
I'm tipping us simply because I've been to Geelong twice before. On the game where we beat them 2 years ago after everything with Jared McVeigh. And when Port Adelaide beat them in 2010 or 9, I can't remember which year.
Port Adelaide beat Geelong, it was back in 07.
Yeah, it would have been 07. That was the first time I ever went to Skilled Stadium. I've only been on 2 occasions and I've come back for 2 wins and I get to go this week. So.
However, if we're going to compare our performance next week to the Port Adelaide game, maybe it would be better to lose the game, given what happened after Port Adelaide won that one.
I don't know. I've got a good feeling about this match. I think we should be able to match him for the midfield, and if we can hopefully we can force Taylor to stay in defence, and that should really help us out. Like the turning point in the match earlier on in the year was when Taylor was able to go forward because Lewis Roberts-Thompson got injured. If we just have a little bit of luck, I think we can win this match.
So then, who do we think are the ins and outs most likely to be? We touched on it a bit earlier, I know, but...
I think it's going to be Rohan out, Mitchell in.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Is Goods fit?
I don't think so. I think we're thinking round 23 for Reid, Goods and Jeddah.
And apparently Lewis Roberts-Thompson was mentioned as a round 23 inclusion today as well.
Jeez, everyone's back round 23.
Wow, round 23 is going to go off.
They can't include all of them, though. They have to pick and choose.
Can you guys imagine that? Like, in, Goods, Reid, Jeddah,
Lewis Roberts-Thompson.
That would just be insane.
I'm almost prepared to draw a line through LRT and Reid's season and almost Jeddah.
I'd draw a line through Reid unless we can play him as a defender. We did draft him as a defender, but he hasn't played there for a while now.
Reid wasn't impressive pre-injury, so I don't see anything that's going to mean he's going to light the world on fire post-injury. So
to be fair, though, we've only had 10 minutes to sample him and Tippett playing together, so it'd be interesting to see how they go.
I think White's doing a fantastic job.
I wouldn't drop White at the moment. I really wouldn't drop White. You can't drop White the way he's playing.
No. As for this week, I've got a feeling McGlynn's going to get suspended. So, as much as I talked about him as a matchup, so out McGlynn in Mitchell. But I don't think Rohan will get dropped.
I think we'll play. I can't see us dropping Rohan. If we're going to play him this week, we may as well keep testing him up till finals.
Do you guys think he'll start on field or as a sub?
Specialist sub. All the way, he's the specialist sub now.
Yeah, I've got a feeling he's been brought in as the specialist sub for the rest of the year.
He's a
I think Lamb is almost the whipping boy and would almost go out. That's not what I'd necessarily do. I'm just trying to guess. Though. He has, but I'm just trying to guess what they might do. I think he's first.
It's getting really hard now. In terms of players are getting so much experience.
If that game had kept going today like it was at half time, though, I'm sure we'd be having a different conversation right now.
Not to mention, it's Geelong, not like St Kilda, so we're not going to get away with we're not going to get with a lot. Yeah.
I'm not even sold on as good as he was today. Reece Shaw having a role in the.
I thought Reece Shaw was pretty impressive.
Yeah,
today,
Reece Shaw was good.
Good spark.
But where's he? Where's he playing?
He seemed
Defense.
to be
He's in
almost
the
in the midfield
midfield.
today.
Yeah, he's in the midfield.
And will that work against Geelong and Hawthorn?
We could
Oh,
use
you
him
can
as
almost play him as
defensive
a half
midfielder.
forward.
He'd be the perfect player to actually tag to run with a Christensen or a Stokes next
Or a
week.
Motlop even, maybe.
Like he's the perfect player to bring in for this type of role. So can't
True.
see.
I want to see how he performs against Hawthorn and Geelong. And Jesse White, as great as he's been, is probably in that boat too. He needs a good performance against the better sides and really stamp his spot in the team for mine. But I don't know, if things go how experts were saying we lose this week, we might actually have a few easier decisions to make. It's a bit harder after a win to decide who to drop.
Grimlock, who do you drop and bring in this week?
Yeah, I'll go with the consensus. I think Rohan out and Mitchell in. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Rohan, though, because the reserves don't play next week. So that would affect his fitness if he gets dropped. But I think Mitchell's best 22, so he's straight back in. I couldn't drop Lamb after his game today.
Okay, fair enough. Well, everyone, that's time for today. We're reaching 50 minutes. Here with SR100, Von, SM, and our special guest, Grimlock. Thank you for listening and good night. Thanks.